Is the NCAA finally serious about transfer portal tampering? If so, Oklahoma State, you're in trouble.
Yeah, not good for us, bud.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into this bonus episode of Locked On College Crossover with Locked On Kansas State and Locked On Oklahoma State. Christian Brown, Cody Stovall still here, hanging out, having a good time. And here's a fun question today. Thank you so much for making Locked On Podcast your first or second listen of the day. If this is your bonus episode of the day, really appreciate you every dayers. But here's a fun question. Let's get right to it, Cody. This is a fun episode today. Is the NCAA finally serious about transfer portal tampering, or is it just another way of them kicking the can down the road? Here's why I'm bringing this up. Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports has reported that there's been some memos that have came out. The NCAA statement has talked about certain things and talking about the potential of adding in this tampering unit, if you will. Any contact before portal entry, if that's what tampering means, by the way, that could be anything from coaching DMs, agents initiating discussions. You know, we all know what tampering is, but
yeah,
it seems like there's finally potentially a way of them hammering it down. What do you think about this?
Well, I think it's both extremely exciting and extremely terrifying if you're an Oklahoma State fan. If you don't know this, K-State country, Oklahoma State and the NCAA have a very contentious relationship. And the last time they found a $300 infraction, they banned us from the entire postseason right after the Cade Cunningham era. Previously to that, remember the Sports Illustrated, Dirty Game stuff? They spent a long time and a ton of money trying to get Oklahoma State for that. And they failed, and they've had egg on their face ever since. They've gotten Oklahoma State previously in the past in the Jimmy Johnson era for, illegal violations, while Texas A&M and OU and Texas were given everything you can imagine under the sun. So I don't know, man. I'm excited because the NCAA does need to prove they still exist and they have some level of competency. But at the same point in time, I think we all know the NCAA has a history of not touching the Alabamas of the world and getting the Oklahoma States and the SMUs of the world. And that's my concern here, because you and I both know 99.9999 to 99% of the country is quote unquote tampering. I got bunny ears out here for audio country. It just depends on how deep they're going to go, right? That's the thing. The Ole Miss stuff, the direct contacting of saying, I know you have a contract, but I don't give a crap. Yeah, that's a different territory. But how deep are they going to go, right? What if a podcast host just so happens to help somebody get into the transfer portal because they know coaches at other schools? Are they going to go after the podcast host? Like, how deep is this going to go? I don't know. But it makes me nervous, man, because the NCAA hates Oklahoma State, and they typically only go after the SMU, Oklahoma State-sized schools when anything does come to fruition.
You've heard it here first. Podcast hosts are the biggest threat to NCAA transfer portal tampering. The memo was sent on Monday, and it was by VP of Enforcement John Duncan. He announces that the D1 board, this is the tweet directly from Ross Dellinger, by the way, this announces that the D1 board of directors have charged the staff to, quote, pursue significant penalties, end quote, for tampering violations. And then while also more publicly announcing cases and reminded schools about the tampering bylaw, and then they reported the bylaw, and he gave a picture. You can check out the Ross Dellinger tweet at Ross Dellinger on Twitter X if you want to see the full thing. Look, you're right when it talks about the fact of, the Alabamas and the Michigans of the world, of those big name schools, that you can obviously see that they are doing the tampering, right? You can tell it's happening, and it's happening in your backyard as well, too. It's happening. It's happening in both of the podcasts you're listening to right now. It just depends on the degree, right? No one is safe, and no one is innocent in this world of college athletics. I think that's very safe to say. But I guess what I want to know is, we've kind of joked about how crazy bad lately the institution of the NCAA really is. Do they even have any weight to enforce any of these penalties as of now? We've kind of seen the joke of how Michigan handled the whole scandal a couple of years ago with the NCAA, and that's one thing, of course. but do they even have any weight to do this?
I don't know. Again, reverting back to when we got our suspension over Jeffrey Carroll getting a $300 paycheck or something to that effect. And as soon as Mike Boynton found out, within like 2 days, he made him give it back. That coach that was responsible for that, Lamont Evans, ended up going to jail. And a lot of it came out, and they gave Oklahoma State a year suspension. But at the same time, LSU and Memphis had proven that there was hundreds and hundreds of emails and stuff deleted and phones destroyed and computers ruined, and they got nothing. They got like 2-game suspension, slap on the wrist. I love Bill Self. He's a Cowboy. But all of that Adidas stuff that got completely swept under the rug while we got a suspension, it's completely asinine the way the NCAA does their business. So that's what I think this is. I think this is their final attempt to throw their hat in the ring and say, hey, we still exist. We still do something. We still mean something. So they better come down, or I don't think they exist much anymore.
I agree.
This is their last try to say, we still run things, or at least kind of run things.
Yeah, that's exactly where I sit. Because, I think it's a double-edged sword. I think the reason it's happening is because the portal chaos has absolutely exploded. NIL collectives are essentially free agent biddings. I think that's a fair way to say it.
Yes.
Coaches are publicly accusing other schools. The Dabo Sweeney thing is the biggest thing that just came up at Clemson just a few weeks ago. That has really probably highlighted this more than anything.
For sure.
And then, NCAA's credibility is weak. It's very weak. And these rulings, it feels like it's a PR correction. That's what it feels like. Better serve the new era of Division I, if you will, but really they've lost control. And that's why I question it. Can they even enforce it? Right? Because you mentioned it, a podcast host could do it. Conversations happen through third parties, and NIL collectives are technically separate.
Yes.
So I just don't know how they could enforce it.
Yeah, again, I don't know either. They're gonna have to have like set in stone layers, because
evidence from text messages or from recorded calls or what?
It's gonna have to be something, I think, like the Golding, Ole Miss, Clemson thing. It's gonna have to something to be that egregious for them to do something. Because again, you're right. Everybody in every school across the country has a friend or a buddy or a media member that has connections to another school, and maybe they're not going to get their scholarship, or they're going to get displaced after spring ball, and those conversations happen all day, every day, and typically it's nothing nefarious, right? It's surface level. Well, hey, buddy, I know you're getting screwed here. I know you got this NIL taken away. Yeah, I can reach out to somebody or so forth. How is the NCAA going to relegate that? It doesn't make sense. And why now?
Not black and white. Yeah, and why now? That's because people have stepped up and they're trying to make a PR correction. I think that's why now is the case. And as you mentioned, I think it's their last stand. But this is what bugs me. I don't know if bug's the right word, but this is where I see it being a significant problem. Because what would penalties be for this? Would it be scholarship reductions? Okay, you're already at 105 roster size. You've already cut it to a certain roster number. So can you do that? Can you get to a point to where people are already complaining? Coaches, Chris Kleiman of Kansas State was complaining how they hardly had people to practice with. If you went to that point, can scholarship reductions be one? Can you find the university? Okay, maybe money has been a big thing with all this NIL, but who are you actually finding? Is it finding the revenue sharing portion? Like, there's a whole bunch of possibilities here. Do you vacate wins? But here's the damage here. Here's the biggest danger that I'm going. All these penalties can be possible, but look, if they hammer one school on something that almost everybody else in the country is doing, and that one school happens to be maybe a G5 or G6 school, a mid-major school, but ignore those blue bloods, the Alabamas, the Michigans, all credibility that really already seems to be gone to the NCAA is completely gone. It becomes political very fast, and we've seen that in the past.
I don't think the death penalty is ever going to be a thing. I think the NCAA has even acknowledged that the death penalty for SMU was a little much in hindsight.
You think?
Right. So I think they've even expressed that they would never go that far again. But you are right. It is going to have to be. Okay, let's call a spade a spade. This whole conversation started because of the head coach of Ole Miss and the head coach of Clemson bringing some stuff to light, right?
At least in this year, yes, I agree. Yeah.
So if that is the main example they're working with, they need to hammer Ole Miss. I don't want that to happen, right? I want to see Ole Miss rise from the ashes after the bull crap that Lane Kiffin did to them and put on them. I want to see Ole Miss succeed, but that's what has to happen. You cannot penalize, like you said, a G5. You can't go after an SMU or even an Oklahoma State style of school if you know that Ole Miss did this and it's very, very readily available to see from coaches and players. Then that's where you start. You have to prove that just because they're Ole Miss and they just played in the CFP and they had one of the best storylines in the country and they had a phenomenal portal, if you're not willing to punish them, then whatever you do to an Oklahoma State or an SMU makes you look feckless. I mean, you called them weak earlier. That's probably being generous.
Yeah. The programs that are trying to be straight with this, again, nobody's innocent in this new world of college athletics. You just can't be.
Correct.
But there's some are more innocent than others. That's for sure.
Yes.
The ones that are trying to be straight with this are going to see this memo and maybe say, okay, look, we're trying our best. But there's going to be some of those other schools, the ones that have been doing this for years, is farther back than the death penalty of SMU forever, who have been doing it for absolutely ever, who are going to read this and say, oh, look, now we have another competitive advantage because some other schools are going to back out now. Now it's another chance to attack. It's not they're not going to see that as a, hey, let's slow down. We're going to say that as, try me. That's exactly what they're going to see that as. There's no doubt in my mind. Do you see this becoming a thing? I think NIL needs some sort of structure. Don't get me wrong. Maybe this is a step in the right direction, but I'm just very skeptical on it.
I think it is a step in the right direction. And I think the acknowledgement that something is wrong, and the acknowledgement from the NCAA that they're finally, ready to do something, I think is at least a start, right? There's been conversations that the NCAA supposedly wants the government's assistance and things of that nature. But if that is the case, they have to prove that they're actually willing to follow through with things. And I think, like you mentioned, this is their attempt to do so. The correction of the PR campaign that has been absolutely disastrous for them. But here's the deal. If for whatever reason it doesn't work, the SEC has talked about branching off. Greg Sankey specifically, right? If that branch off were to ever happen, I do believe that what the NCAA is trying to do now will be a foundational building block in some of the rules that are put in place. But again, I think the NCAA needs to do something here or they won't exist, right? They're going to become a component that is only liable for like GPA and class load management. They're going to get themselves removed from, overseeing athletics if they do not get this right, I think.
Yeah, I agree. On the other side, let's talk about, other than Kansas State games, at least in my opinion, I'm sure for Oklahoma State, you might agree as well. But other than those games, the Army-Navy game is one of my favorite games to watch all year long. I make an absolute day out of it. That could be changing. Let's talk about that next, right here on this Locked On College Crossover. But first, this episode of Locked On College Crossover between Locked On Oklahoma State and Locked On Kansas State is brought to you by FanDuel. If you've ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person, well, FanDuel is giving you the chance to do that. You can turn your dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works, folks. All you got to do is use their profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered in a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole shebang, the whole experience. Whether you believe in those Detroit Pistons, Cade Cunningham, maybe you believe in the OKC Thunder,
that's
to make
right.
a trip to the East or Western Conference Finals. You can do that with your futures boost. All you have to do is just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel. It's the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
And we also got to talk about Indeed. Hiring can be completely chaotic. Take the chaos out of your life. Get with Indeed. Sponsored Jobs, who's going to help you find the perfect candidate, not just a warm body to fill a seat. Here's the stat that says everything. In the minute that we've been talking, right, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you are, in fact, hiring, get the person with the skills, the experience, the location that you are looking for. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing those candidates. It's less stress, less time with more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of our shows will get $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. So just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about us on Indeed podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. If you need to hire, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs.
Love it. And if you're trying to look for maybe go ad free, join the Everydayers Club. If you're an everydayer and you're looking for that next step, you can check out Locked On Oklahoma State or Locked On Kansas State, completely ad free, Discord access, and exclusive coverage to the Locked On podcast, exclusive national shows. All you have to do is go check out the show notes below and join the Everydayers Club. How about this to end this bonus episode of this Locked On College crossover?
Yeah.
Army head coach. This is a good time to talk about this because the U.S. hockey team just won gold, first time in 46 years. We're feeling really patriotic, right? Well, Army-Navy game is definitely what we think about when we think college football. We think patriotic. Well, Jeff Monken, the head coach of Army, came out and talked about the potential movement of the Army-Navy game. And the biggest reason behind it is because of the changing of the dates of the college football playoffs, the inevitable expansion of the college football playoffs coming down the years. And they're thinking about maybe it's a good time to move the Army-Navy game because you want to make sure this game is standalone. Here's the quote that he said. Then I want to get your takes on this. Jeff Monken told this. He was speaking to The Athletic. He said, quote, "I think Army-Navy game is a huge part of history of college football and what it is today even. Give us a 4-hour block on Thanksgiving or on Friday of Thanksgiving, or on Saturday of Thanksgiving, and give us a 4-hour block. And just say nobody else plays during this 4-hour block. That's still protecting the game." I'm not going to lie to you. I love making a day out of the Army-Navy game. But if you told me that at a certain time, maybe right before the NFL on Thanksgiving, or maybe Black Friday or something like that, that was the Army-Navy game, I wouldn't be mad about it. I'd actually be quite exciting knowing it was a standalone game in college football.
It absolutely has to be, right? The pageantry that comes with that game is one of those, yes, you're right, puff your chest out, feel American as all get out. As always, go Army. Shout out to my 45th brethren in Oklahoma. But it does need to have its own slot. At the same point in time, it being as late as it is into the season and the way that it kind of creeps into the CFP conversation and stuff, it's slightly problematic. And additionally, I think that for college football moving forward, whether you adjust to CFP or not, we're going to have to start moving the beginning of the season to week 0. Get rid of week 0. Everybody should start earlier. And then you give that block to the Army-Navy game. And then that afternoon, that evening, you have a few games. That sorts a lot of this nonsense out, a lot of this chaos, and it keeps that heck yeah, hua American that comes with that game. So I think this is one of the most brilliant things that any coach in the country has said all year. I absolutely love it.
I agree with everything you just said, except for the part you said go Army, because it's definitely go Navy. No doubt about that. Shout out to the people who I served with on USS Hopper and USS Forrest Sherman. And then you can even add my wife into it, USS Cole and USS Gonzalez.
Okay.
For sure. But either way, hey, look, I think this is a game that you absolutely have to have a standalone. You have to make sure the pageantry is there. There's no doubt about that. If you can protect it, and if the head coach that's been there for a very long time, a well-respected coach in Jeff Monken, is saying a 4-hour window is good enough, then that's good enough for me. And if you think about how it was this year, there was only really a 4 to 6 hour window because a bowl game happened later that evening. Now, it was a smaller bowl game, but there was another college football game on the same day as the Army-Navy game. I was actually quite shocked that was a thing this year. So the fact that you can do that shows that it's possible. Maybe you can move it earlier into the season. That doesn't bug me really. What is going to be interesting though is Army was very close to making the college football playoffs a few years ago. If they have a game in the middle of the season that might not count towards the American Conference, because now they're in the same conference and the Army-Navy game does not count towards their conference record. It's seen as a non-conference game, or maybe it doesn't even count as college football playoff possibilities, which I'm not sure if that would be the case. But if you're doing that in the middle of the season, or potentially I've heard the idea of moving it to being a standalone game on week 0, which I'm not totally against either.
It's better than the current setup.
I agree. I agree. But the only thing that makes me nervous is like if Army or Navy is in the running for a college ball playoff spot, would one of the greatest games in college ball history, the Army Navy game, potentially ruin that for one of their teams if it's done in the middle of the season or at the very beginning of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I don't love, honestly, week 0 for that particular game. But yeah, that kind of Thanksgiving style of window, it makes the most amount of sense. And I think all of us could agree the shame of it being where it is now placed, it's mixed in with some BS bowl games. And I just don't think that is beneficial to either school. And I think that it does kind of diminish some of that pageantry and patriotic theme that comes with it. Who better to be playing close to the holidays than that particular game? And another big thing is, as you mentioned, both Navy and Army over the last 5-6 years have had some of these 11 win kind of runs that did put them in that conversation. And so if it's, a latter half of the season kind of game, and let's say they're both 8-0 or one's 8-0 and one's 7-1, that type of thing, that's what builds more of that marketability for it.
I think the only question I have is I think Thanksgiving weekend would be perfect, but I think, would you be able to do it on Thanksgiving itself? Because you'd have to compete with the NFL, or is it a game? Because you can't make it the Saturday of Thanksgiving because there's still college football. So how do you make that work? Black Friday, they've been taking over. College football has been trying to take that over as well. NFL has been trying to battle that. Do you find a way to work a partnership with the NFL to make that 4-hour block just Army Navy game and maybe take away an NFL Thanksgiving game because they have added a couple extra over the last couple of years? What is the thought process there? Can they still thrive if NFL is on? I think you have to find a way to make it a complete standalone block that includes the NFL if you're going to make this right.
That's a perfect segue into what I was going to say. Yeah, I think it's a perfect partnership for the NFL. There's not a better game in the country to get people invested than an Army Navy game. So if you had Army Navy every Thanksgiving morning and then every afternoon evening was filled with NFL games and you could see the Lions, you could see the Packers, you could see the Cowboys. Yeah. That is like, again, we're going back to this hell yeah hua experience that gives you. That's your entire day is patriotic, football driven. And I think that Army Navy game in the morning would do more for football fans across the country than having an NFL game in the morning.
Yeah. And watching Charlie Brown miss the field goal in the very morning before the Army Navy game would hit so much more too.
And then whenever you go outside and you have your family football game, everyone's going to be fired up after watching the most patriotic game in the country.
Yeah. When Navy beats Army. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, let's get on out of here. Thank you so much for listening to this bonus episode of Locked On College Crossover. Make sure you hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening. Join the Everydayer Club. We appreciate you stopping by. We'll see you back here next time, right here on either Locked On Kansas State or Locked On Oklahoma State.